You're listening to Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez.
Thank you so much for joining us. We continue our drive home. Our next guest covers higher education for the Heckinger Report. He co-hosts the NPR podcast College Uncovered. He's written for the Washington Post, the Times, NPR, the Boston Globe, and Wired. John Marcus has published a piece this week with a headline that grabbed our attention. Once globally preeminent U.S. universities are sliding into decline. John, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about, your piece opens with a warning from 1945, from a wartime government report. Tell us about starting 80 years back and the story that is important now.
So academic research or scientific research that was done largely at universities was a really important part of the Allied victory during the Second World War. And at the end of the war, there were warnings to keep it going. There were concerns that funding for academic research would decline. In response to that, the government put money into academic research and more money after Sputnik. And the research that was done at U.S. universities and colleges really kind of propelled the economy, especially the tech economy that developed at the end of the 20th century. And so what struck us about that moment was it's happening again. We now see threats to research funding for universities, although funding cuts under this presidential administration have largely been reinstated by the courts. The money has been doled out very, very slowly, and there are proposals now to shift a lot of that funding away from universities.
So it's not, and again, it's not like one policy. There's, as you mentioned, there's these cuts. Then there's also research funding cuts, visa delays, deportations of student activists, social media screening. I mean, what a bonkers time we're living in. How do those compound?
Yes, I think bonkers time is the technical description. What we wanted to look at was it is incontrovertible that the U.S. higher education system is one of the industries that's been most successful in this country. In fact, higher education is our sixth biggest service industry, mostly based on the $40 billion a year that international students spend on their university educations and their housing and everything else that they spend when they're here in the United States. So we have been sort of, because of the federal funding, we've really kind of dominated the world in higher education. The smartest people wanted to come and teach here. The smartest people wanted to come and study here. A disproportionate number of Nobel laureates worked at U.S. universities. Many of them had come here from other countries. Now that's starting to reverse. We're seeing a lot of really top scholars leave the United States. They're going to places like China. We're seeing far, far fewer international students. There was a huge decline this year. There's a projected additional decline in the coming year of 111,000 fewer international students. And so what we once had, what we once were preeminent in higher education globally, we're slipping.
And that's, and I think it's, I struggled to drive this home, this idea, right? Which is that, there are a lot of people who, when they're writing a check for their kids' tuition, they're not interested in hearing about international students and not really grasping, and we can't explain to every single person. Those international students subsidize everybody else's tuition, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's so important. More than 300 colleges and universities since the beginning of the Trump administration have announced budget cuts and layoffs. And a portion of those have attributed that specifically to the decline in international enrollment. International students, as you say, subsidize American ones. 80% of them pay the full tuition. Some of them pay additional fees and a higher tuition than domestic students.
Whoa.
At some public universities. And so the money from that source, universities like to say that they enroll international students because of the cultural diversity they bring. And there's some truth to that. But much more important is the money. And the result of this is be careful what you wish for, because right now, the international students that are going everywhere else, that means cuts in majors, cuts in staffing, cuts in advisors for domestic students. And probably, although not one single university would talk to me about this, literally all of the universities that have seen large international enrollment declines have also increased their tuition. None of them would say one way or the other whether that was a result, but it's logical to assume that it is.
And now we're talking about how there's more than a quarter of private colleges that no one's talking about this, John, that more than a quarter of private colleges could close or merge within a decade, which would put over 670,000 students in limbo. Can you talk to us a little bit about which institutions are more exposed? And here's the thing, talk about what happens to a college town when this happens.
Colleges already are closing last year at a pace of about one a week. That slowed down. The colleges that are most vulnerable are local, meaning they don't have a national name. They are small, typically under 1,000 students. They are tuition dependent, meaning that they don't have big multi-billion-dollar endowments. Often they are religiously affiliated. More than half of the colleges and universities that have closed have been religiously affiliated. The other kinds of colleges that are particularly at risk are rural colleges and single-gender colleges, of which there are still several colleges, mostly all women colleges.
Of course. I mean, I don't know why that's not surprising. So one of the things that I learned from the work that you're doing and then looking at it some more is the DHS rule taking effect. Is that taking effect next month that caps international students at 4 years, which means if you're in the middle of if you're doing a PhD, that's not PhDs don't get finished in 4 years necessarily, do they? Or other degrees?
Yes, that's absolutely true. It's really hard to finish any program, including an undergraduate degree, in 4 years. Fewer than half of any kinds of students at four-year universities actually graduate in 4 years. It's one of the dirty little secrets of higher education. And so this it's called a duration of stay rule. A number of organizations just this week have sued to stop it. But, all of these things put together, including what you mentioned, the detentions, the deportations, the social media reviews, students can't even get appointments that they need to get a student visa at the embassies and consulates. At this point, college students that might have considered the United States, they're going every place else because there are a lot of other countries that want them. And if you're an international student, would you come to the United States right now? Probably not.
No. And here's the thing. You wouldn't want to come here, but also we are losing at this rate. We might be losing an entire generation of people who have a background in science and medicine, right?
We are heavily dependent on international students, especially in graduate and doctoral programs. But many graduate programs, because of federal funding cuts, have stopped taking students. We've already been passed by China. China now produces more PhDs in science, technology, engineering, and math than we do. And now, obviously, they have a larger population, but the pace of growth is also 5 times faster than here in the United States. So we've always kind of taken for granted the strength of our universities and colleges. They're still ranked among the best in the world. They still attract more international students than any other country, but that's slipping. And you mentioned earlier that your readers might not care. They ought to care because this affects all of us. This affects our economy. This affects our global competitiveness.
Before we let you go, I just want to know, what do you want to leave our audience with? I mean, one is staying on top of stories like this, whether it's with the following. Are you on social media sharing these stories as well from the Heckinger Report?
Yes, all of our stories. The easiest way to find us is at heckingerreport.org. It's HECHINGER report, all one word, .org. And as far as takeaways, I mean, higher education has let us down in the last 15 years. It's gotten insanely expensive. What people were getting for their money was comparatively poor. So not all of this is about the politics. A lot of the international students that stopped coming just couldn't afford it anymore, even from wealthy countries, to pay the full tuition and an extra surcharge. So I think what we all need to take away from this is that we need this to get fixed because not everyone has to go to college, but somebody has to. And so we have to have a strong higher education system to train the people who will keep this knowledge economy moving.
And you have, a way for folks to share information with you as well. Is that right? You want to?
Yes.
Yes. Let folks know about that too.
There's all kinds of contact information at the Heckinger Report, and at the end of all of my stories is a way to contact me. I'd love to hear from readers. I know there are a million stories out there, mostly unfortunately, mostly of frustration and probably of people who work at universities and colleges who are seeing what's going on right now and equally frustrated. There are some really good people that work at universities, but in general, they haven't really served us well in the last 15 years.
Well, thank you for doing this work and for sharing your insight with us. I really appreciate it. Again, the article we're talking about, the piece, is Once Globally Preeminent, U.S. Universities Are Sliding into Decline. That's at the HeckingerReport.org. And the piece is by John Marcus. We look forward to talking to you again, my friend. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you again soon.